If you
If
touch
you
her
touch
again,
her again,
I'll burn this entire
I'll burn
district to the
this entire
ground.
district to the
The
ground.
words sliced through Seoul's underground fighting ring like a blade through silk. Every head turned. Every breath stopped. Because when Jin Young spoke, men didn't just listen, they obeyed or they bled. But tonight, his rage wasn't for his enemies. It was for the three men circling a woman who had no idea she'd just walked into the lion's den of South Korea's most feared syndicate territory. Before we dive into this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Vera clutched her camera bag tighter, heart hammering against her ribs. She'd only wanted photographs of Seoul's hidden street art for her gallery exhibition. The old Yeoljiro district was famous for its gritty beauty, neon signs bleeding color into rain-slicked streets, vintage shops tucked between modern buildings, the perfect collision of old and new Korea. But she'd taken a wrong turn somewhere between the print shops and metalwork factories. One minute, she was photographing a stunning mural of a tiger. The next, she'd pushed through a rusted door she thought led to the street and found herself descending concrete stairs into a basement that smelled of cigarette smoke, sweat, and blood. The underground fighting ring sprawled before her like something out of a movie. Men in expensive suits sat at tables ringing a central cage where two fighters circled each other, bare-knuckled and brutal. Money changed hands. Women in tight dresses served drinks. And every single person radiated the kind of danger that made Vera's instincts scream run. She turned to leave, but three men had already noticed her. "Look what walked in," the tallest one said in Korean, blocking her path. His friends flanked him, hungry eyes raking over her body. "You lost, pretty girl." Vera's Korean was fluent after 3 years in Seoul, but she pretended not to understand. "Sorry, wrong place. I'm leaving." "Not so fast." The second man grabbed her wrist. "Foreign girls who wander into places they don't belong need to pay a entrance fee." Her stomach dropped. She'd heard stories, foreign women disappearing, bodies found in the Han River, cases that never got solved because the men responsible had money and power and connections that made them untouchable. "Let go of me," she said firmly, this time in perfect Korean. The surprise on their faces would have been funny if she wasn't terrified. "Oh, she speaks our language," the third man laughed, moving closer. "Even better, means she'll understand when we tell her exactly what we want." Vera's mind raced. The exit was blocked. The crowd ignored her. This clearly wasn't the first time something like this had happened. No one would help. She was alone. She did what she always did when cornered. She fought back. "I said let go." She twisted her wrist using a self-defense move she'd learned in London, but the man's grip was iron. So she stomped on his foot instead, hard enough to make him yelp and loosen his hold. "You bitch." That's when the atmosphere changed. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the fighters in the cage stopped, sensing the shift in power. Jin Young emerged from the shadows like a king surveying his kingdom. He was tall, taller than most Korean men, with broad shoulders that filled out his tailored black suit perfectly. His face was all sharp angles and cold beauty, the kind that belonged on magazine covers except for the dangerous edge in his dark eyes. Eyes that were currently fixed on the men surrounding Vera with an expression that promised violence. "Hyungnim," the tall man released Vera immediately, bowing low. "We didn't know." "You didn't know what?" Jin Young's voice was quiet, controlled, which somehow made it more terrifying. "That touching women without permission is forbidden in my establishment, that I've killed men for less." The three men went pale. Jin Young walked toward them with measured steps, each footfall echoing in the sudden silence. He stopped in front of the one who'd grabbed Vera, studying him like an interesting insect. "She asked you to let go," Jin Young said softly. "You didn't listen." "Boss, we were just—" "If you touch her again," Jin Young's voice dropped to a lethal whisper, "I'll burn this entire district to the ground, and you'll be inside when I do." The threat hung in the air, so real Vera could almost smell the smoke. The men bowed repeatedly, backing away, stumbling over apologies before disappearing into the crowd. Jin Young watched them go, then slowly turned his attention to Vera. Their eyes met. She should have been terrified, should have run the moment those men scattered, but something in his gaze, beneath the ice and danger, looked almost concerned. "You're not supposed to be here," he said in English, his accent British-educated, refined. "I noticed," Vera replied, finding her voice. "The door was unmarked. I thought it led to the street." "Most doors in this district lead somewhere you don't want to go." He tilted his head slightly, studying her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. "Especially for someone like you. Someone like me. Foreign, female, alone." His gaze traveled over her, not leering like the other men, but assessing. "You stand out." "I've noticed that too," she said dryly. 3 years in Seoul had taught her that being a black woman in Korea meant constant stares, endless questions, and assumptions that ranged from, "Are you a singer?" to, "Are you in the military?" Something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. "You speak Korean well." "I've lived here for 3 years." "Doing what?" "Photography, art, things that apparently lead me into underground fighting rings." This time he definitely almost smiled. "Your name?" "Vera." "Vera," he repeated, like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. "I'm Jinyoung." "Should I know who you are?" "Most people in this district do." He gestured toward the exit. "Come, I'll make sure you get out safely." "I can." "You can't," he interrupted firmly. "The men who touched you will wait outside to save face. They'll convince themselves that hurting you will restore their reputation. They won't care that it would mean their death." He held out his hand. 5 minutes of accepting help won't kill you, but refusing might." Vera looked at his outstretched hand, elegant fingers, scarred knuckles, the kind of contradiction that seemed to define him. Against every instinct that screamed about strange men and dangerous places, she took it. His palm was warm, his grip careful despite the calluses that spoke of violence. He led her through the crowd, and people moved aside automatically, bowing, averting their eyes. Whatever Jinyoung was, whoever he commanded absolute respect born of absolute fear. They climbed the stairs into Seoul's neon-soaked night. The contrast was jarring, from underground darkness to a street alive with light and sound. Normal people walked past, laughing, shopping, living ordinary lives completely unaware of what existed beneath their feet. A sleek black Mercedes waited at the curb, driver standing at attention. "I'll take you home," Jinyoung said. "That's not necessary." "It's not a request." His tone left no room for argument. "This district is mine. What happens here is my responsibility, including making sure foreign photographers don't get hurt because they took a wrong turn." "Your district." "Every business, every building, every person from here to Dongdaemun, all under my protection, all under my control." He opened the car door. "Where do you live?" Vera hesitated. Giving her address to a man who clearly ran some kind of criminal organization seemed like a spectacularly bad idea. But the alternative, walking home alone through streets where 3 men might be waiting, seemed worse. "Itaewon," she said, sliding into the leather interior. He joined her, and suddenly the spacious car felt intimate. She could smell his cologne, something expensive and dark, cedar and smoke. Could feel the heat of his body, though he kept a respectful distance. They drove in silence through Seoul's glittering streets. Vera watched the city blur past, hyper-aware of the man beside her. He'd saved her, threatened to burn down an entire district for her. Why? "Why did you help me?" she asked finally. "Would you prefer I hadn't?" "That's not an answer." He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw something unexpected in his eyes. Not lust or possession, but genuine curiosity. "You didn't scream or cry or freeze. You fought back. You spoke Korean to surprise them. You tried to escape." His lips curved slightly. "Most people panic when they're afraid. You strategize. And that's worth burning down a district." That was metaphorical. Was it? His silence was answer enough. They pulled up to her building in Itaewon, the international district where foreigners clustered, and Korean was optional. Vera reached for the door handle. Vera. She paused. This district Itiwan is neutral territory. You're safe here, but Yuljiro, Jongno, Dongdaemun, those areas are complicated, dangerous. His eyes held hers. Don't go back to places with unmarked doors. I wasn't planning to. Good. He leaned across her, close enough that she caught her breath, and opened her door. Be careful, Vera who takes photographs. She stepped out, legs shaky, mind spinning. The car didn't leave until she was inside her building, safe behind locked doors. That night, Vera couldn't sleep. She kept seeing those dark eyes, hearing that quiet voice promising violence in her defense. She told herself it was just adrenaline, just shock, just the aftermath of danger. She told herself she'd never see Jinyoung again. But Seoul was smaller than she thought. And Jinyoung, it turned out, was very good at finding things he wanted. The gallery opening was everything Vera had worked for. 3 years of grinding, networking, proving herself in an art world that saw her as a curiosity rather than a serious artist. But tonight, her photographs lined the walls of a prestigious Gangnam gallery, and Seoul's art elite had actually shown up. She wore a black dress that hugged her curves, her braids pulled into an elegant bun that showed off her neck, and the gold hoops her mother had given her before she died. She felt beautiful, confident, powerful. Then he walked in. Jinyoung moved through the gallery like he owned it, and maybe he did. She was learning his influence reached everywhere. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her rent, and every head turned to watch him pass. Fear and fascination in equal measure. When his eyes found hers across the room, time stopped. He approached slowly, studying each photograph with genuine attention. A shot of an elderly woman making kimchi in a traditional market. A child's abandoned shoe in a demolished neighborhood. Street art blooming on the side of a building scheduled for destruction. Each image captured something beautiful being erased by progress. When he reached her, he didn't speak immediately. Instead, he examined the photograph closest to them, the one she was proudest of. A young girl standing in the ruins of an old Hanok house, sunlight streaming through the broken roof, her face lifted toward the light. You see things others miss, he said finally, still in English though they were surrounded by Korean speakers. The beauty in endings. Every ending is someone's beginning, Vera replied. The girl in that photo, her family's house was demolished, but she told me she was excited because they were moving to a new apartment with heating that actually worked. Optimistic. Realistic. Sometimes things need to end for better things to begin. He looked at her then, something unreadable in his expression. Do you believe that? Don't you? In my world, endings are usually just endings. Nothing better grows from ashes, just more ash. The sadness in his voice made her chest ache. Then you're burning the wrong things. His eyes widened slightly. She'd surprised him. Good, she didn't want to be predictable. I want to buy 3 pieces, he said abruptly. Which ones? He pointed to the girl in the ruins, the abandoned shoe, and a photograph of her own reflection in a puddle, Seoul's skyline inverted behind her. These. Why those? Because they hurt to look at. He met her eyes. Real art should hurt, should make you feel something you'd rather not feel. The gallery owner rushed over with paperwork when she realized who was buying. The amount Jinyoung paid made Vera's jaw drop, triple her asking price. That's too much, she protested. It's not enough. His gaze held hers. Your work deserves to be valued properly. After the transaction, as the gallery slowly emptied, Jinyoung lingered. He studied each photograph again, asking questions about her process, her inspiration, why she'd come to Korea in the first place. My parents died in a car accident, she found herself saying. London felt haunted. I needed somewhere completely different, somewhere I could rebuild myself from scratch. And did you rebuild yourself? I'm still under construction, she smiled softly. What about you? Were you born into whatever it is you do? No, his jaw tightened. I was supposed to be a professor, literature. I had a fellowship to Oxford, a dissertation on post-colonial narratives in contemporary fiction. Then my father died and everything changed. What happened? My uncle tried to take over the family business, started a war that killed dozens. I had to choose, let him destroy everything my father built or become something I never wanted to be. He looked away. I chose survival, chose power, chose a life where I'd never be vulnerable again. That sounds lonely. It is, he turned back to her, until recently. Her breath caught at the implication. Have dinner with me, he said suddenly. Why? Because I want to know more about the woman who photographs endings and sees beginnings. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night. Because when I'm near you, I remember what it felt like to be someone other than this. He gestured to himself, the expensive suit, the dangerous reputation. One dinner, Vera heard herself say. One, he agreed. They both knew it was a lie. One dinner became 2, then 5, then so many Vera lost count. Jinny Young showed her a Seoul she'd never seen. Private restaurants where chefs prepared meals for only 6 people a night. Rooftop gardens hidden behind unmarked doors. Late-night markets where vendors greeted him with bows and free samples. He was careful never to expose her to his darker world, but she saw glimpses. The way people stepped aside when he passed. The phone calls he'd take in rapid Korean, his voice going cold and hard. The scars on his knuckles that he'd trace absently when he thought she wasn't looking. But with her, he was different, softer. He laughed at her terrible attempts to make kimchi jjigae, listened intently when she talked about composition and light, held her hand while walking through Namsan Park like they were normal people living normal lives. What's your favorite photograph you've ever taken? He asked one night, sitting beside the Han River, city lights dancing on dark water. One I never showed anyone, Vera admitted. I took it the day after my parents died. I was in our garden and there was this spider web covered in morning dew. The web was broken, probably a bird flew through it, but the spider was rebuilding it, just patiently fixing what was destroyed. Do you still have it? In a box in my closet. Too painful to look at, too important to delete. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'd like to see it someday, when you're ready. Why? Because it's part of you. The broken parts, the rebuilding parts. I want to know all of you, Vera. Her heart stuttered, even the messy parts. Especially those. He touched her face gently. I've spent 5 years being nothing but sharp edges and cold calculation. Then you walked into my fighting ring with a camera and courage, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to want something other than power. What do you want? You, the word was simple, devastating. I want you in my life, in my space, in my thoughts. I want to wake up and know you're safe. I want to come home to someone who sees me as human instead of a monster. You're not a monster, Jinny Young. You don't know what I've done. I know what you've done for me. Protected me, respected me, never once made me feel like I owed you anything for your help. She turned to face him fully. I know you're complicated and dangerous and probably bad for me, but I also know that when I'm with you, I feel seen in a way I never have before. He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of longing that made her toes curl. When they parted, his forehead rested against hers. I'm going to ask you something, he whispered, and I need you to really think before you answer. Okay. Be mine, officially. Let me protect you, take care of you, give you everything you deserve. Let me be yours in return. Are you asking me to be your girlfriend? I'm asking you to be mine in every way that matters. I don't do casual, Vera. I don't know how. It's all or nothing with me. She should have been scared. Should have run from a man who dealt in violence and power and dangerous absolutes. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw only honest emotion, vulnerability and hope and desperate longing. All, she whispered. I choose all. His kiss this time was deeper, hungry, relieved, like she'd just saved him from drowning. They became inseparable after that. Jinny Young reduced his work schedule, something his men couldn't believe. He came to her apartment bearing food and flowers and books of poetry he thought she'd like. She dragged him to museums and vintage markets and taught him to see Seoul through an artist's eyes. He was careful with her, almost too careful. Their kisses grew more heated but always stopped before going too far. She could feel his restraint, the way he'd pull back when things got intense, jaw clenched with effort. "Why do you always stop?" she asked one night, breathless and frustrated after he'd pulled away from another kiss that had her melting. "Because once I start, I won't want to stop." His voice was rough. "And you deserve better than being rushed. You deserve romance and time and certainty." "What if I'm certain now?" "Vera, I'm a virgin not made of glass." She touched his face. "I know what I want, and I want you." His control cracked. She saw it in his eyes, felt it in the way his hands tightened on her waist. "You're sure?" "Completely." "Then marry me first." She blinked. "What?" "Marry me." He said it like it was obvious, inevitable. "I won't take that from you unless you're mine in every way. Unless I can give you my name, my protection, my entire life in return." "Jinyoung, that's insane. I know, too fast. I know that too." He cupped her face. "But I love you, Vera. I love you in a way that terrifies me because I've never needed anyone before. And I won't have you without the promise that I'll spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice." Tears filled her eyes. "You really want to marry me?" "More than I've ever wanted anything. Even though I'm foreign, black, from a completely different world." He smiled. "You're Vera. You're brave and talented and see beauty where others see ruin. You're everything I didn't know I was looking for. Everything I don't deserve but will fight to keep anyway." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." The relief on his face was beautiful. He kissed her softly, then pulled a small box from his pocket, like he'd been carrying it, hopping. Inside was a simple platinum band with a single perfect diamond. Not flashy, not ostentatious, just quietly beautiful. "It was my grandmother's," he said. "She was the only person in my family who believed love should be gentle. I want you to have it." He slid the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, and Vera realized this dangerous man was nervous, hopeful, vulnerable. They married 2 weeks later. A quiet ceremony with minimal fanfare, Jinyoung's 2 closest men as witnesses, Vera's best friend from her art collective who knew better than to ask too many questions about the groom's occupation. When the officiant pronounced them married, Jinyoung kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning, like she was home and he'd been lost. "Mrs. Park," he murmured against her lips. "Mr. Park." She smiled through tears. He brought her to his penthouse, their penthouse now. Glass and steel overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline, beautiful and cold and desperately needing her warmth. In the bedroom, his nervousness returned. "I've never," he stopped, started again. "I know you haven't either, we can wait if." "Jinyoung," she took his hands. "I trust you, I love you, and I want this, want you. I don't want to hurt you." "You won't." What followed was tender and awkward and sweet. Nervous laughter and whispered reassurances and touches that grew bolder as fear gave way to trust. He was so careful, treating her like something precious. When he finally made her his wife in every sense, when their bodies joined and her gasp of surprise turned to pleasure, he froze. "Vera," his voice was strained, reverent, "you never told me you were this tight." She blushed, hiding her face in his neck. "You never asked." He laughed, actually laughed, and the sound made her heart soar. Then he began to move, slow and careful, and she forgot everything except the feeling of being completely, perfectly his. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweat slicked and satisfied. "I love you," he whispered, stroking her hair. "My wife, my everything." "I love you too," she murmured, pressing a kiss to his chest where his heart beat steady and strong. For 3 weeks, they existed in a perfect bubble. Jinyoung came home early every night. They cooked together, made love, planned a future that included art galleries and maybe children someday and growing old together. Vera had never been happier. Then one morning, she woke up nauseous. She dismissed it as something she ate, but when it happened again the next day and the next, she started noticing other signs. Tender breasts, exhaustion, the way coffee suddenly smelled revolting. She took the test alone in their bathroom, hands shaking. When the positive result appeared, she sat on the marble floor and cried, joy and terror swirling together. Pregnant, she was pregnant with Jin Young's child. She told him that night, watched his face cycle through shock and disbelief before settling on fierce, protective joy. A baby, he breathed, dropping to his knees and pressing his face to her still flat stomach. Our baby. Are you happy? Terrified, he admitted. But yes, God, yes. They held each other, dreaming of nurseries and first steps, and a child who would have her courage and his strength. But their happiness was short-lived. The threat came 3 days later. One of Jin Young's men arrived at the penthouse, face pale. Boss, your uncle, he knows about her, about the baby. Jin Young went completely still. How? We're investigating, but the man swallowed hard. He's ordered a hit on her. The world tilted. Jin Young's uncle had been imprisoned 5 years ago after the war for succession. But apparently prison hadn't dulled his ambition or his hatred. He still had loyal followers on the outside, and he just painted a target on Vera's back. When? Jin Young's voice was death itself. Tonight, maybe sooner. Within minutes, the penthouse filled with armed guards. Jin Young pulled Vera into the bedroom. Pack essentials only, now. Jin Young. My uncle wants me destroyed, and the fastest way to break me is through you. He cupped her face. I won't let him touch you. I'll burn everything to ash before I let anyone hurt you or our baby. They left through a private elevator, descended into an underground garage. A convoy of black cars waited. They almost made it. Gunfire erupted as they reached the lead car. Jin Young shoved Vera down, covering her body with his own as bullets shattered glass and sparked off metal. His men returned fire, the garage becoming a war zone. Stay down, he commanded, his weight protective above her. When the shooting stopped, he practically carried her into the car. They sped through Seoul's streets, running lights, weaving through traffic. Vera's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst. Jin Young held her against his chest, one hand protectively over her stomach. I'm sorry, he whispered. God, I'm so sorry. Not your fault. It is, my world, my enemies. Stop, she grabbed his face. You're keeping me safe, that's all that matters. They arrived at a safe house in Gangnam, a fortress disguised as luxury. Jin Young's most trusted guards secured the perimeter. You'll stay here, he said. I have to go. No, she grabbed his hand. Don't leave me. I have to end this. Have to make sure you and our baby have a future. He kissed her desperately. I love you, more than my own life. Nothing in heaven or hell could keep me from coming back to you. Then he was gone. The next 6 hours were the longest of Vera's life. She paced, prayed, pressed her hand to her stomach, and whispered promises to the tiny life growing there. When her phone finally rang, she answered immediately. Vera. Are you hurt? I'm fine, it's over. His voice carried exhaustion and relief. My uncle and his people won't threaten us again. You're safe now, our baby's safe. She collapsed, sobbing with relief. He arrived covered in blood that wasn't his, eyes haunted. But when he saw her, everything else faded. He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. Never again, he swore. Never again will anyone make you afraid. That night, back home with double security and all threats eliminated, Jin Young made love to his wife with desperate tenderness. Kissed every inch of her skin, whispered promises, claimed her over and over. My wife, he murmured, hand over her belly. My family, my entire world. My husband, she replied. My protector, my love. Outside, Seoul glittered and breathed. But inside their glass tower, 2 people who'd found each other against all odds held tight to the life they'd built. Jin Young had been right. His world was dangerous, violent, stained with darkness. But Vera had brought light into that darkness, and he would spend the rest of his life making sure that light never dimmed. I love you, he whispered as sleep claimed them. I love you too, she murmured back. And in the safety of his arms, Vera knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. A Mafia boss and an artist. A Korean man and a Black British woman. Two impossible people building an impossible love in the heart of Seoul. Some love stories don't start gently. Some begin with gunfire and danger, and a voice cutting through chaos. If you touch her again, I'll burn this entire district to the ground. And some, against all odds, still bloom into something beautiful. This is just the beginning of Jinyoung and Vera's story. Want to know what happens next? How they navigate pregnancy in the underworld? What challenges their marriage faces? Comment episode 2 below and I'll continue their journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of unexpected romance.